Hey everybody, I'm Jammer. Today I'm joined by Jake.
What's up?
Nice. So today we're going to be talking about Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2. So I had recently finished, like if you see me on Twitter, I recently finished 100% run of actually the whole trilogy. And you, Jake, have just finished Prime 1 and 2 for the first time ever. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to retrospectively look back and just see what's the better game overall and kind of just gush about both games, because that's honestly the only reason I wanted to do this discussion. So, what do you think? Like, after beating both games, like, what's your overall impressions? And then we'll kind of go and to each game after that.
Okay, well, Prime 1 and 2 are just incredible. I love the game so much.
Did it live up to everything, all your expectations?
You know, I was going in, like, people have always recommended the game to me. People are surprised I've never played it before, so I'm thinking, alright, I'll give it a go. At first, I was like, okay, this is off to a good start. And the outcome, I can just talk about it for hours. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing game. So, and me personally, I played the Prime games first, and eventually went back and started playing the 2D games. But like you, like the Prime games, specifically 1 and 2, are some of my favorite games of all time. So, without further ado, let's kind of break it down. Let's start with Prime 1 and talk about some of its pluses and maybe some of its negatives, and then, just overall just talk about that game first.
Alright, well, for starters, just the very beginning, if I was to take myself back to 2002, being used to the N64 and, what other kind of game systems you had back then, just right off the bat, the epic intro of Samus's gunship landing on the,
yeah, with the music and
on the frigate, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
awesome.
So good.
It still got me. I was thinking, wow, I mean, imagine what people thought back then.
See, yeah, that's the thing, like, even going back and replaying, this game hasn't even looked like it's aged a day. It blows my mind that it was made that long ago. When you look at comparison to other games that are made around the same time, like, it's unreal that Metroid Prime has held up as well as it has.
Also, the thing, the GameCube, the games are incredible, but the system was limited. After all, the games were on mini discs, which can only carry about 1 gigabyte of data.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet the game is so big.
And beautiful and amazing. And actually, so I've actually had this game. I got Prime 1 when it was when they were doing the prints of when you could get the demo for Prime 2 with a second additional disc. So it was near the release of Prime 2. And even though I had it that long, I honestly didn't beat it for the first time until only a few years ago. Because when I was a kid, I was just freaking too scared of that freaking intro. The theming and the fact that the parasites are ripping apart those Federation troopers. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even handle it.
I mean, even before the whole game starts, you're put in that menu select. I played on the Trilogy, so I never saw the menu select, but you have that incredible menu select theme, and even the title theme is awesome. It just heavily insinuates what this whole game is all about, what you're about to experience.
Yeah, exactly. There's often conversations, outside of discussions like this, where we'll just be talking, and then you'll play one of the Metroid Prime songs and be like, okay, guess what this song's from? Because honestly, some of them are so iconic and they're so they're just amazing to listen to.
They're catchy.
Totally.
I love modern music a whole lot, but sometimes I'll just turn on Metroid song and be alright with it.
So was it last? No, actually it was. Oh, maybe it was. Oh my gosh, it was a year ago. Anyways, a year ago, I actually had played Super Metroid for the first time ever, and I actually did a video on this a while ago. And
it's really good.
Yeah, and the comparisons I was drawing to Prime blew my mind.
Parallel.
So that's one thing that Prime 1 did so well, is it got the feeling that the 2D games, specifically Super Metroid, did, and basically translated it almost perfectly to a 3D space with the platforming elements, the feeling of being alone, the combat itself. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people can kind of judge it preliminarily, seeing it, oh, it's just a first-person shooter game, when it's not. It's definitely not in that category. It's a first-person adventure for a reason,
It's a big adventure.
My kudos to the developers, because, how they translated from just a platforming game and brought it to the 3D space was phenomenal, almost to the caliber, if not surpassing, how Mario went from 2D to 3D with Super Mario 64.
Well, the ironic thing is that staying true to a game is what gives you success. But when you go off, your comfort zone and do something different, you might end up with a bad result. But in Prime, the transition from 2D to 3D was just incredible.
Yeah, and some of it's platforming. Like, you really never, when you think of Metroid Prime, you don't think of, oh, this is actually a platforming game. You think of, it's a first-person adventure game. But
There's
some
still
of it's
platforming.
Yeah, there's some tricky spots, like that one, like it's a tubular. There's many tubular rooms that are like up and down shafts. But there's one specific one where it's like you're jumping across those like roots and vines from like trees and stuff, and there's the enemies walking across with the little spikes. Like, it's so satisfying to be able to speed run through that really quick and like just snipe out the enemies before you even get to the platform. Like, that's the thing. It's like it's kind of a hidden sense of platforming, but there's actually a lot in it that's truly amazing.
One of the things that really impresses me about Prime 1 and even Prime 2 is that no matter how many times you replay it, you'll see something new. Something you did not catch before. And that just shows like the polish and like how much care the developers had for this game. Really respectable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, my first playthrough of the game, I could care less about the scan visor. I maybe did it once or twice to maybe scan a boss to hopefully get some insight on how to beat it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could care less. And then, like, I got some of the lore, but it was like, whatever. So when I did this most recent 100% run, I not only collected every scan, but I read every single scan in every single room. And the amount of lore in that game is unreal. But I think the most appreciable part of it is the fact that the game is enjoyable to like a high caliber, even without all of that stuff. That's the thing that impresses me the most,
I mean, it's like the best way to really do a story, because some people don't like the story, and I've read about this on forums saying like the story's like there's just not enough story. Well, I just want to say to that dude, man, you just gotta scan.
It's so true. Like, how the space pirates struggle with experimenting with Metroids and experimenting on other space pirates with the Phazon, and like, and how much they're really afraid of Samus,
Yeah, you read about, they call you the hunter, and I'm gonna go to Prime 2, skip ahead a little bit, but they mentioned that there's two of them now, thanks to the appearance of Dark Samus, and how they call Dark Samus a quote platinum AAA level threat.
Yeah,
it's really cool. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, you could play through the entire game and not know any of that stuff, but still have an amazing experience with it, because it's a game focused on gameplay, and that's the thing that shined, and that's the thing that's going to hold up this game for now and forever,
And another thing that surprised me is that someone told me that it's like heavily exploration. I'm thinking, I don't want to explore. And then I play the game, I'm like,
yes,
is there more to explore?
Right? Like, is there secret places here? Can I use this to open here? And yeah, it's so awesome.
Satisfying.
And one thing I really liked about this, in comparison to Prime 2, is the fact that the progression feels a lot more natural. Yeah, there's like moments where you do have to backtrack, but most of that is usually funneled into an elevator that will take you to that past area, and then that will funnel you to basically a new room that you can then go get the upgrades. That's what like I can give to Prime 1 about. Like, I feel like it's progression and how you traverse through the world and as you're supposed to anyways, like in order. It feels more natural instead of like forced to go back to some ridiculous place that you didn't need to go to, and then to only come just back, It's like the backtracking feels a lot more natural is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
Another thing that I kind of like about Prime 1, and I know you're going to agree with this, is I kind of touched on it earlier, but the fear, and not only that parasite part, but the frickin' the dumb mines and the little lab thing. The lab, oh my gosh. So, like, the frickin' part where all the lights go out, and it's like, you have to use nothing with the thermal visor. Those pirates come out of nowhere. That theme gives me goosebumps up and down my spine every time I hear it.
And after you kill those pirates that are invisible, you hear the glass breaking.
And shatter, yeah, and then guess what happens?
And then you hear the little cries that this Metroid's ready to... Oof.
Right? And that's the thing also I do like about Prime 1 versus Prime 2. Granted, Prime 1 didn't want to focus on Metroids, which is okay, but I really do like how Prime 1 had that focus on on the Metroid race and, developing that part of it. Especially like in the mines and seeing like the Hunter Metroids, and oh my goodness.
I can imagine like 3 being like the conclusion of like a movie series. Like, it's epic, you like join forces and stop a force, right? Yeah. Oh, that too. We failed to mention, you have not played 3 yet, but you plan to start it. But yeah, anyways, continue. But especially for the second game, I see like it's just like a build up for like a conclusion. I mean, even though it's focused on the Luminoth, like you begin to like notice that this Dark Samus is a true threat. Yeah, exactly. And it's going to take a lot to stop it. perfect transition to the third game, which I haven't played yet, but I can just predict what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, because when they made the first game, they never really planned on making a trilogy, of course. Like, obviously, at the end, if you get the secret ending, there'll be, like, a hint to a potential sequel. Like, you know, when you see the Phazon oozing, and then when you get the Phazon suit ripped off you, you know, and you see basically Dark Samus being created there. But, of course, it's not like they're like, okay, we are definitely making a sequel, you know, while they're, like, they didn't have that idea when they were making this first game. I don't even know if they knew this was going to be as much of a success as it was, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's almost everything I have to have. I mean, I could talk on hours for positives. I mean, like, bosses, music, combat, just like overall feeling and controls of Samus just feel so much fun. But if I had to critique and say, like, one bad thing about it is the missable scans are it's a bit annoying. I mean, like, it's kind of hard to do. Like, it's possible, but it's a little bit difficult to do without consulting a guide while you're doing it, you know? Like, for example, the Ice Shriek bats, like, they literally disappear after you leave the room, and then you can never see them again. And that will, if you want to do 100% run, that could totally ruin it. Which, I mean, I guess that adds challenge, but, like, some of them are kind of, I don't know, they're a little harder, and harder than they should be, I guess is the word I want to say.
And I think that kind of translates to Prime too. I mean, for some bosses, there's so many phases, so you have to like scan individual parts.
That's
of the
so
boss
true.
Too. And if you lose on the boss, sometimes you just like think you just like overthink it, and you don't end up scanning them and you realize, oh, I have to go back and scan, turn the game off, load the game back up.
Yeah, or like a Morbus. Like, how the heck were you supposed to know there was 4 forms or whatever? Like, sometimes you can't even tell that they're a different scan because like it looks the same still, you know.
I'm pretty sure Quadrax has had more scans.
I'm sure it did.
You had to scan Quadrax and he was stunned.
Yeah, it was like, it was a stun mode, like a hovering mode. It was unreal, yeah. So that's all, yeah, obviously skip, but that's also a critique I have as well for Prime 2. No, of course not. So do you want to start talking about some of the pluses of Prime 2?
Absolutely.
All right, so when I first, the setup was great again for this game, and like, I think one of the things I never really noticed when I first played it, but going back, like, the visual upgrades are actually apparent. Like, some of the things I didn't even notice, like the textures on some of the models are a lot more improved. Like, sometimes around doors, there's like tiny little bugs crawling around that you'd never even notice unless you looked really closely.
You can see your reflection on your arm cannon.
Oh yeah, when you fire your beam and like shoot off a big shot, you can see like the reflection of Samus's face back onto her visor.
Actually, let's revert back to Prime 1. If you look closely to the space pirates they get in your face, you can see your own reflection and their own orange glowing eyes.
Cool. Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's like small little touches like that. Like, honestly, without this game would have been great without it, you know? But it's like small little things like that that make a good game great, basically.
Yeah. Or when you shoot like 10 consecutive like rounds of the power beam in Prime 2, just in very quick succession, you can see like heat from your arm.
Oh yeah, where the heat comes off. Yeah, exactly.
It gets me every time. So cool.
And it's kind of a bummer that Trilogy, anyways, had to remove the charged graphics from Prime 1, where like your arm will freeze over and stuff like that. I understand why, because it was like desynced with like the Wiimote motion and whatever. So it made sense why they had to get rid. Yeah, it was a bummer, but they didn't want to have to redo it from the ground up, you know. So the big difference between Prime 1 and 2 is the big, I guess you could call it a gimmick of like Light World and Dark World, and you get those 2 beams like practically right off the bat in the game, you know.
Kind of bothered me actually.
Really? You wish you got them later?
I mean, like, I thought it was cool. Like, I got a dark beam right away. I was like, I wonder when I'll get the light beam, you know. And then all of a sudden,
you got like the next room.
I had the light beam.
See, I think so. I kind of agree, like, that Prime 1 did really well with how it handled its beams. But I think what Prime 2 is setting up, and its essential gimmick for the entire game. I hate to call it a gimmick, but that's really, in a way, what it is. But, like, I think it did it really well. Like, the puzzles affecting both Light and Dark World. It wasn't just like a solve all. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do. Check the Dark World. Oh, yeah, now I can progress. It, like, there was a lot more complexity to it. And especially how enemies had weaknesses to either beam. And, like, I think it worked actually really well.
Another thing that bothered me is that all of a sudden, like, you were kind of just used to the whole Light and Dark beam and going back and forth with it, which was cool. Then all of a sudden, what's this Annihilator beam?
Which you get at, like, the end of the game, you know?
Yeah, and it's not that good.
No, I mean, So I've noticed with both Prime games, they towards the end of the game they intentionally try to give you overpowered or really strong power-ups, which like maybe some people could say like, oh, that's game breaking, but the intent is because usually at the end in both of the games at the end you have to like traverse and go back to countless areas to get all the artifacts in 1 and get the Sky Temple keys in 2, and those power-ups like basically assist you to traverse a lot quicker rather than like taking multiple shots to take down an enemy. You can just zap them in a few shots or just kill them with screw attack in 1 hit, you know.
Screw attack. I love the screw attack.
It's so much fun, right?
Yeah.
So like I guess I could see that being a critique, but like I think it actually is intentional and it works out well just because otherwise could you imagine having to go through Prime 2's world is definitively way bigger than Prime 1's. And the fact that like could you imagine having to traverse it without that power up or even like without those, more powerful yeah, exactly. And like also
Can't imagine.
Also the light teleportation through the temples, which at first I thought I'm like, okay, I'm not going to use this that much, but with this,
nope.
Yeah, exactly. It is so dang useful because then you can like go to all 3 worlds with all connected to the temple.
Oh, I use it all the time.
It worked so well. Yeah. So like, because like in Prime 1, if you look back, like, do you think that would have made sense to even have something like that? Because I think it works pretty well without it.
Some people will appreciate backtracking.
Mm-hmm.
But some people who like fast travel in say Skyrim, I do that. And would I personally have enjoyed like a fast travel? Yeah. But
go ahead, sorry.
But it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I actually like looking back. I actually appreciated the back traveling.
So that's one. So when you play Corruption, there is a sort of fast travel. You'll understand it more when you play it. But
okay.
And that's actually a thing I don't like about Prime 3 because it makes everything feel real. This is getting out of this discussion, but anyways, makes everything a lot more disconnected. Like Prime 1, you feel like you're definitely on one world, and this is all intertwined and connected. Especially for the fact that you can travel to like the Fernanda Drifts in like 2 separate spots within like the same a similar walking distance in Magmore Caverns, making it feel like it was all one big place.
I like to think that like Prime 1 and 2 are my favorite games of all time, and I only played, Metroid Prime on June. That's when I
just
bought
recently.
It. Yeah, still amazes me.
So I guess I was gonna say like, if I had to critique Prime 2, is it makes sense, I guess, in a way for how they wanted to set up the overall like progression. But I don't know. I didn't like the temple and key aspect. I talked about this with a while ago. How it really felt like you went to a new area, you got like 1 or 2 new power-ups. Then with those new power-ups, you went to the dark area, you got all the keys, and then you use those keys to open the temple, you fight the boss, you take the light back, start over again in the next area. Like, it got a little bit better in the later areas, like, especially in the Ing Hive area. Like, that felt a little bit more natural. But, like, in the early areas, like, the wastes and stuff, it really felt like plug and chug. And, like, it was very oh my god, how you say it? Formulatic? That's not right. Felt very like a formula,
Okay, yeah. I can see where you're coming from. Now, some people would say, like, it's too Zelda-like. No.
In a way, I guess kinda. Like, if you get the keys for the temple, but like, obviously Zelda's totally different. But I guess I can kind of see. Yeah, it's totally different. But like, the point they might be making is, it's just like you get a couple of keys, you use those keys to open a door, and the door unlocks a boss fight. While like in Prime 1, sometimes you have no idea a boss fight was about to come up. Like, you just walk in a room and all of a sudden there's something huge. You're like, oh my god.
Now, my original shock in Prime 2, because we're talking about like big bosses right now.
Yeah.
When I first got all the keys from the Ing Hive, and who I knew was going to be Quadraxis, someone spoiled that for me. Thanks, person.
Yeah. Oops.
But they said they were going to be big, and then I saw Quadraxis. I'm like, oh, they weren't kidding.
Like big, yeah.
Boss.
Morbus is huge.
Oh yeah, Morbus is so big.
I think overall, all of Prime 2's bosses are probably bigger than 1. In Prime 1, the biggest ones you have, the plant one was pretty big, but it doesn't really move. I don't know, they're all relatively big, but I think overall, I think Prime 2's might be better.
The biggest. Stardust was like a huge boss. And
that's true.
Omega Pirate was big too.
So, since we're on the topic of bosses, which game do you think had better bosses?
2.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Even though my favorite boss of all time, Quadraxis.
You really liked it that much?
I mean, so cool. It was a cool fight. I'm not gonna be real.
Maybe I was just stupid, but I kept thinking those dumb magnetic rails were active when they really weren't.
Oh, I tried that.
It happened to me so, like, throughout, like, when you first start, like, yeah, when we were talking about this, when you bomb his feet, and then you're like, well, now what? I kept trying to jump up his legs. I'm like, well, why aren't these magnetic rails working? Little I know, they weren't even activated until, like, the end of the fight.
Oh, Quadraxis, awesome fight.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of agree with you. I actually really do like the boss fights in Prime 2 better. I like the more natural, like, oh my gosh, we're all of a sudden in a boss fight, because that's more like how Super Metroid was, where, like, it wasn't necessarily a structured build-up. It was just kind of like, you'd be moving along, and then, like, things would maybe... Yeah, exactly. Or, like, hallways would start getting more quiet, and you're like, okay, hold on, what's going on here? And then, yeah, exactly, Kraid, or, like, exactly. So I think Metroid Prime did it better in that sense, but I think, overall, the design of the fights were better in 2.
Like when a Morbus finally has 3 of its, or like 2 of its goons,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a big boss, and it's doing all these crazy, like, it's shutting down like the beacons, and you're like, wait, I need those.
Yeah, I just started the game. I freaking need those light beacons.
And it's like combining like power and like creating this like dispersing like this crazy energy in this ball. So cool.
Yeah,
and Chica or Chika, however the hell you pronounce that thing. Like from swinging around to like shooting while you're swinging. I've always loved doing that, even if there's nothing to shoot at.
Yeah,
I'll just like swing and shoot because it's just fun.
But
you can do that. You can do that with the Chika.
Whatever.
Yeah. Chica was awesome. I mean, like when I beat little Chica Lava, it took forever. I couldn't figure out what hurt him a lot.
Yeah, that freaking the hitbox is like so tiny and only appears for so long. It's like that was the hardest part of the fight.
Damage either. Finally, I beat him. And I'm like, yeah. And
right.
Then burst out of the cocoon. Fall.
Yeah. Yep. Not done yet. So I mean, I guess also on the topic of bosses, how about just mini bosses?
Oh, Dark Samus. Every single Dark Samus fight.
Those are your favorites?
From the first one to the last one. It's incredible.
Yeah, those. Yeah, I like those. Which game do you think did mini bosses better?
2.
2 again?
2 again. Wow. I mean, you remember flamethrower arms, whatever that thing was in Prime 1?
Oh, that was awful.
Stupid.
Wait, I forgot about that thing. Oh my gosh, yeah. What did that even give you? Like, didn't that give you like just normal bombs or something like that?
I
don't even remember.
But it wasn't even, I mean, flamethrower arms. That was a mini boss.
Yeah, I mean,
and don't get me started on the freaking war wasps.
Yeah, and that's like right at the beginning, like right after you finish the intro. That's the first thing you do. You go in to the ruins, you go left, you go through hallways, then it's freaking the war wasps.
And then you have to spend like 10 minutes like saying, okay, what is this? This is so annoying.
Spinning in circles. It's even harder on GameCube, let me tell you. Actually, I don't know. They're both really difficult because just trying to aim is like, especially when you're brand new to the game, it's really hard. So
yeah, that was one of the things that kind of drove me away at the game at first. Was just that I was like, what's all the hype about this? And I went back and played, and I'm happy.
Yeah, control. That's the thing. I have another friend who I really wanted to play the Prime Trilogy, or even the first game alone. But the thing that turned him away was the controls. And I really feel like GameCube and Trilogy alike both work really well. You just got to get used to it. Like, once you're used to it and you master it, you feel awesome when you're killing stuff.
Oh, yeah. It feels like Samus,
Yeah, the best is when you do the strafe and you, like, shoot a quick beam and you hide behind a wall. And, oh, man, feels awesome.
I want to go back to mini bosses.
Yeah,
and
same.
Probably, like, my second favorite mini boss, or actually, like, even considered boss for that
Swear to God, you say Boost Guardian.
It was a cool fight because it didn't die that much.
But you played it on Trilogy, you don't even know. You don't even know. It was so fucking hard in the freaking GameCube game.
Well, I mean, okay, I barely lived that third time around. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, I think I was lucky, just to be honest with you.
Probably.
Second favorite, like, boss fight, mini boss fight, pick one, I guess, but second Dark Samus fight is awesome. So cool. I mean, it seems almost cinematic. You're on an elevator, everything's getting destroyed. I can imagine, like, the climax of the fight. Like, I can just imagine this in a movie. This fight, like, it'd be so cool. Like, I mean, like, the fight's just, like, reaching a climax at the very end where like the elevator's like almost destroyed. Maybe she's like dangling off the edge. Oh, it's just so cool. I love it.
It's a very cinematic fight, and
True. Yeah, it's awesome fight.
So
it was hard too. I almost died.
Yeah, it's a difficult fight. So what I want to say about the mini bosses is personally, I did like how a lot of them were handled in 2. I don't know if I was the biggest fan of some of their designs. Like for example, Boost Guardian, Jump Guardian. Like a lot of them looked practically copy and paste. Which like I mean that's
Spider
not.
Guardian.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. So it's like that's nothing to critique about. I guess like it's a different fight every time. But I think overall, I don't know. I mean, maybe it having like the names like being Jump Guardian and you get the jump boots from it, and Boost Guardian being where you get the boost ball from. Like, I don't know. I would have loved to see a more creative take on these mini bosses. You know, like if they had designed the Boost Guardian to what if it was like what if it was a morph ball but like with like limbs and like or even like spider legs or something like that, and it'd crawl up on the ceiling and then boost down to you and stuff like that, instead of being just
the game out of fear.
Well, I mean,
sounds terrifying.
You know what I mean. Like they could have definitely maybe made them more unique rather than just being typical Ing warriors just with more like stuff on them. You know, still great bosses, but you know that's the kind of thing I would critique about that, anyways.
Speaking of Ing, it's so entertaining to just enter a room with the Mather Beam and shoot the beacon and watch them just like mesmerized.
Suicide.
I mean, the Ing warriors will just like book it to the beacon, and the Hunter Ing will just like float slowly towards it. And they die.
Oh yeah, speaking of enemies, what you know the ones that like shoot, are those the ones that like when you shoot it, it kind of like gets all fuzzy and like gets out of the dimension you're in or whatever? You know what I'm talking about?
The commandos?
No, what are the ones that like have really long arms and like they kind of shoot their arms at you and they got like a
Hunter Ing.
Though I hate those things. Those things are awful.
I've never tried to face one without using power bomb or super missile.
Yeah,
that just sounds awful.
Straight up, I just would ignore them because they're like literally I couldn't handle. Those are the worst.
They're freaky. Not gonna lie, they're pretty scary looking.
So yeah, that's another I guess I could touch on is so Prime 2 is obviously a way darker game, but I still feel Prime 1 is a much scarier game and experience overall.
It's 2 is consistently dark thanks to Dark Ether.
Yeah.
You know, props to Dark Ether. Love you. But there's just some parts in Prime 1 that really like. I mean, even though the game's not a survival horror, like there's some elements that really like insinuate some like a sense of dread and horror. Especially
when you're infiltrating the space pirate base or mining facility or whatever, and like the stealth pirates that like drop down from the ceiling and then turn invisible, and you're like, oh my god, where did they go?
or when you turn the thermal visor and you see pirates hanging on the ceiling and you just automatically think, okay, is the door still unlocked behind me?
Yeah, like can I just leave?
Or I think the soundtrack is my favorite soundtrack. I mean, everything about this game is my favorite.
Right. I mean, that adds a whole nother layer of like some of the ambience alone, like in like Dark Ether, or even in like the mines, like we touched on earlier. It
scary
adds
themes.
Exactly. It adds a whole nother level of immersion that it just absolutely makes it a complete package.
Based on mines, first floor. It has a sense of this is real life. You get those ambience. It's not like the other Metroid themes at all, but it still feels Metroid.
Yeah, exactly.
It just says Metroid. I really like that theme, or Torpus Bog Subterranean, or Torpus Bog Catacombs, whatever you like to call it. It's not really supposed to inflict dread, but it's still just so sinister.
Yeah, I guess
haunting. It's a haunting theme.
So I guess one last thing I could critique about too is, I hate Torpus Bog, the underwater part. It was an annoying puzzle for me, and especially you had to go back. Not only go back, but go back to the same boss room to fight a different boss. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an overall detriment, but it was kind of like an annoyance. And I mean, some of the power-ups, like, most of them were pretty useful. Some of them, I mean, felt kind of like, this is just used to open a door. Like the Seeker missiles, for example. Like, other than the enemies that hang from the ceiling, which are really only in 2 rooms in, like, the Luminol Sanctuary. Other than that, you only use it to open those purple doors,
The Torpus Bog Subterranean, I actually personally liked it, but there's one thing I hated about it. The blogs.
Oh, yeah.
Blogs are freaky. I mean, they get up in your face.
Sometimes
It's
I mean, I've had a glitch
It's
before where
scary.
my camera clipped inside of it, so I saw like the pink innards of its mouth. I'm like, oh my gosh!
so it's frightening.
One of my
Like
favorite
yeah,
power ups you
there's
get there is that little jetpack you get, which is so
cool.
cool of an idea, but
It,
you literally never use it again.
well, it's cool to look at anyway.
It is pretty cool.
Ooh, but I think like the scariest, even though I haven't played Prime 3, the scariest theme like in the whole Prime trilogy is the Valhalla depths.
Quit looking ahead, you little cheater.
Not cheating.
I know, I'm just kidding. Well,
But,
we'll
man,
do
I
maybe we'll
listened
do
to
another discussion once you finish Corruption, and then maybe we'll look at the whole trilogy as a whole, or talk about that game. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, so let's just put them head to head. Go basically what we like one over the other, and kind of just converse back and forth. Then we'll declare which one's our favorite. And one minor thing we can first touch on is the overall suit designs are way better in 2. Way better.
Yes.
Like Dark Suit
Way
looks
better.
amazing. Light Suit, oh my gosh. But the thing I can
The
critique
morph
about
ball.
that. Yeah, the morph
All
ball
the
changes too. Yeah, so freaking cool.
Swirly patterns, awesome.
But one thing I can critique about it, though, I liked how in Prime 1 you got them more frequently, because the suit upgrades are one of my favorite things. Granted, you don't even see them that much, but I don't know, it just feels like a huge sense of accomplishment when you're visually upgrading, you know? So I like
Yeah.
the designs in 2 better, but I like the fact that you get them more frequently in 1.
So, I mean, you just pick one or the other. When it comes to personal preference, every gamer has their own preference. Not every person's gonna like a puzzle game like Zelda, or exploration like Metroid.
Yeah.
But I like dark games. Like that's why I like Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask compared to the other Zelda games.
Mm-hmm.
I just like a darker premise, and I just love I mean, Metroid's dark in general, but
Yeah.
the consistency of how dark it is just gives me a little bit of edge towards 2, and I like to think 2 is my favorite game
Of the 2, really?
of the 2 and favorite game of all time.
Wow. Wow, what a mic drop. Well,
I mean, and the difficulty, like looking back, I appreciate the difficulty. Even though I hate Emperor Ing, what an annoying boss. But
Awful.
still a cool boss fight with the whole mutated thing, even though it looks like a normal Ing. I think the first phase looks more mutated. But the dark, like the whole dark setting, and I just love it. And props to that final boss in Metroid Prime 2. I mean, you feel that sense of power coming from Dark Samus.
mm-hmm.
So cool. And I kept dying, and I thought I had to play Emperor Ing one more time just to get to Dark Samus. But hey, I mean, it lets you keep going. It's like it like saves for you.
Yeah, it lets
Thank
you go right
goodness.
to the... And the pressure of it being... like, there's a time limit. Granted, I've
I
like never
know.
ran out of time. But like, just the pressure of that being there, you know?
So cool. I mean, whole game, just favorite game ever. So awesome. I just love it.
So, for me, this is really hard. So when I first played these 2 games, it was Prime 1 definitively. I didn't actually have the greatest experience with 2 because of the specific critique I talked about with the temple keys and the temples just too like plug and chug. So that was what kind of held it back for me the first time. Second time through though, I have a way better appreciation for Prime 2, especially because I read all the lore, learned about like the Luminoth War versus the Ing. But I think still in the end, I still have to give it to Prime 1 just for because like that's really like
I'm triggered right now.
you're not.
I'm so mad. I'm just.
Well, I
kidding
have to
now.
say Prime 1 just because if I think of like a new Prime game, what I want it to I'd rather, or excuse me, when I think of like the Prime series, like the gameplay I think of is Prime 2. And like again, lack of a better word, but the gimmick of the Dark World Light World, I loved it. It worked really well in Prime 2. But it's not like I want to see that happen again in another Prime game. Granted, like when I played Corruption following it, I kind of missed going between Light and Dark World. But I think the overall experience of Prime 1 is just, it was still a better overall experience. And the fact that like it was just so mind-blowing first playing it, you know?
True. And I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love Metroid Prime 1 so much. But it's just, Metroid Prime 2 just beats it just by a tiny bit.
See, yeah, and you could ask me a couple days later and I might change my mind. Because honestly,
Okay.
Prime 2, like, it definitely improves on a ton of things Prime 1 introduced. Like, you know, just the combat overall feels more fluid. Like, there's definitely better platform elements. The morph ball sections and, like, boss battles are obviously better. We agree that, like, the Dark World, Light World works really well. But I still think in the end, like, if I'm gonna go back and replay forever and ever one game, it's gonna be Prime 1.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I totally respect your decision, even though I hate it. I'm just kidding. No, but can I just say, I think Metroid Prime really is not an underrated game. You know, it's had amazing critical acclaim, but I think Metroid Prime 2 is a bit underrated for how good it is. People just automatically assume Prime 1 is better, even though objectively I think it might be a better game. But when it comes down to personal preference, I pick 2 above 1. And yeah, it's underrated. And if you guys have not played any of the Prime games, or even a Metroid game for that matter, skip Other M.
Oh my god, yeah. Frickin', okay, if you have a Wii U, frickin' $20 for the best trilogy in almost all gaming, you know?
All gaming. And honestly, my best gaming experience, one of my best experiences ever.
Yeah, so, yeah, again, for me, so it's like, it's so hard for me to choose. It really is, because, again, replaying it, like,
so
gave me,
close.
You're totally right that Prime 2 is underrated, especially because, like, a lot of people can be deterred away by the light and dark gimmick. I wish I had a better word for it, but there's really no other way I can describe it.
It's a gimmick. But gimmick is not necessarily a bad thing, because the 3D transition was a gimmick, and it gave me the best experience.
Yeah, because it's the thing is, just Prime 2 did the whole switching worlds really well. You know, that's the thing. It did. So actually, if they ever wanted to return to Ether and maybe a light and dark world again, how cool would it be in an actual 2D space where they're doing like a more Super Metroid-esque? I'd love to see their take on that in a dark Ether, light Ether setting. You know. So I wouldn't be opposed to something like that, but I think in the end, like the overall, like, the Space Pirate designs for one were better in Prime.
Space Pirates were just so much more intimidating. The theme was more intimidating in Prime 1. Definitely give props to Prime 1 for that. But the Space Pirates and Corruption are dumb.
Oh yeah, they're really dumb with Corruption. But it's yeah. So anyways, what I was saying, like, Prime 1, amazing platforming, like the fear, like we just mentioned, and like the natural progression of the entire game just feels a lot more fluid, and like the backtracking feels a little bit more natural. But I still think Prime 2 definitely has the better visuals. The light and dark world works so much better, and like
bosses.
The harder and better bosses, and like
and
the whole.
I like the soundtrack more. Soundtrack is just tiny bit. Like, I love them both pretty much equally. It's like 0.1 off, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So in the end, Prime 2, it's just the temple and key thing, like, it worked. It does work, and it feels a little bit better, like I said, towards the end. But it's still, it just feels a little too structured than I want it to be. Like, I'm sure there could have been some alternate solution to still make it so, okay, the boss is in this place. So instead of making it actually keys to open a door, there could have been some other way. I mean, it still works, don't get me wrong, and it shouldn't be the thing that's it still isn't a bad concept, you know, it's still a great game. But I think that's the one thing, because like that, it made it feel like a game rather than an experience, you know, like it's still, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So that's really just my thought in the end. So any final thoughts? You kind of just want to wrap this up before we conclude it?
I want to support Prime 1 one more time, but Prime 1 had my favorite part of the whole series so far, and that's the Metroid quarantine, you know, and the phase on mines. And when you, I mean, like, I think that and the thermal visor room are like the darkest parts of probably the whole series, based on what I've heard.
Yes.
Because you're in a cave with the most dangerous creatures that are being mutated by a substance that can kill you in a microsecond.
Right. Oh, and then the ambient music.
And the music playing, and it's pretty much pitch black.
It makes you so uncomfortable, and like it makes you feel like, you know, awkward, but it feels great. Like it's still amazing, you know.
It's just like one of those things that give a game its character, that makes the game special. And yeah, Metroid Prime.
Great games.
Best games.
Best, yes, definitely.
Sorry, I had to correct you.
So anyways, I guess that's our final thoughts on both Prime games. Let us know in the comments what Prime game is your favorite versus 1 and 2. Let us know.
4.
The Prime 4 isn't real yet, and I don't think Retro's working on it. Yeah, no.
Amiibo Festival.
Oh my god. So yeah, give this video a huge awesome like, and definitely subscribe for hopefully more Metroid in the future. And I guarantee we're going to be doing more discussions in the future as well. I mean, I'm almost done with Kingdom Hearts. So once I finish that, we're gonna get my first time through Kingdom Hearts. So once that's over, I'll have you come back. We'll talk about that too and gush about that there. And yeah, so definitely subscribe for more stuff like this, and catch you in the next one. See ya. That was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Great. I loved your. Thanks for that. Just last input. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks, appreciate it. You're useless to me.